Hello, and welcome to HERstory, a program where we tell the stories of women who served the nation, past and present. I'm Phyllis Wilson, president of the Women in Military Service for America Memorial Foundation and retired Army Chief Warrant Officer 5. Today, we look back on the events of September 11th, 2001. A day that changed the world and remains a source of pain 20 years later. Early that morning, American Airlines Flight 11 was hijacked by Al-Qaeda terrorists. Flight attendants managed to alert authorities, and 2 fighter planes were scrambled from Cape Cod's Otis Air National Guard base to locate and tail Flight 11. But they were not even in the air yet when the first plane crashed into the World Trade Center's North Tower. Millions of people around the world first learned of this terrible tragedy by watching or listening to the news.
This just in, you were looking at obviously a very disturbing live shot there. That is the World Trade Center, and we have unconfirmed reports this morning that a plane has crashed into one of the towers.
Details at this stage as to what sort of plane it is.
And it was very loud explosion followed by flames, and it looks like the building is still on fire on the inside.
I've never seen anything like it. It literally blew itself into World Trade Center.
Virtually everyone old enough to remember that day has a 9/11 story. A generation's "Where were you when?"
It was maybe about 9 o'clock at night in Korea, and my friend, who was also stationed there, was watching television, and they saw the news flash about the planes that had just crashed into the World Tower.
I was actually at the quilt shop all ready to work, and my dad came out of the house and came into the shop and says, "I think you better come see the TV. There's been, a plane hit the tower." And of course I'm looking at him like, "What are you talking about?"
It was early in the morning, and we're at home getting ready for work, and my mom called us frantically, letting us know that the first plane had hit the World Trade Center. And of course, immediately, we're turning on the TV to see what's going on.
A big bang, and then we saw smoke coming out, and everybody started running out, and we saw the plane on the other side of the building, and there was smoke everywhere, and people are jumping out the windows. Over there, they're jumping out the windows, I guess because they're trying to save themselves.
Very, very quickly, there are more explosions.
I was in the hospital. When I saw it hit, my doctors came in the room. They just all happened to be from New York. They just fell apart. They couldn't use their phones. They couldn't get through. They know people that was working in the building.
I had come back from my space station flight just 3 weeks earlier, and I was still in physical rehabilitation from our 6-month flight. And we were also doing the start of post-flight activities in terms of interviews. And when the first airplane hit the towers, the Twin Towers, I was oblivious about it. I was having an interview with a national reporter on the telephone at that moment.
So I immediately went to, of course, I lived in the barracks, day room, turned on the television, and just watched everything unfold on television.
We spent the whole day watching the TV. I don't think anybody really, left the TV that day.
We'll be watching this for much of the day. There is chaos in New York at the moment. There have been not one but 2 incidents, as Charlie and Diane have so ably.
Still unaware the country was under attack, those in the World Trade Center's South Tower were told to remain in place. It was not until 9:02 a.m. that they were instructed to evacuate. But 1 minute later, at 9:03, United Airlines Flight 175 crashed into the South Tower.
You have no idea right now.
There's another one. Another plane just hit. Right, oh my God, another plane has just hit. It hit another building. Flew right into the middle of it. Explosion.
That looks like a second plane.
I had an appointment to go over to the pool and continue my rehab. And when I went over there, my physical trainer told me about the second airplane. I didn't know about it. I got in the pool and was starting to do stuff. Her husband was downtown Houston. He was calling her constantly. The bottom line is I was in the water when the plane hit the Pentagon.
I was walking through the courtyard at the Pentagon, and it got real quiet and just the rustling of the trees. You know how you can sometimes hear that? I got into my office and I picked up this legal document and I was going to walk it down the hallway. And I stepped outside and I thought, don't go down there, go the other way. And I went, okay. And I stepped into the office where Kathy Abel was and Holly Russell, and they were our congressional liaisons, and they were watching TV, and I said, what are you doing? And they said, we're watching the tower got hit in New York. And I looked at it and I just got this foreboding feeling. There's going to be a series of attacks across the United States and we're next.
The NASA administrator, because he was from New York City, Dan Golden, he got to the point of deciding to close all NASA centers because by then people realized we had a massive national security incident on our hands. And he sent everybody home. And after that, things devolved pretty quickly to, this is not a normal day.
At 9:31 a.m., President George W. Bush declared the events in New York City to be a terrorist attack.
Today, we've had a national tragedy. 2 airplanes have crashed into the World Trade Center in an apparent terrorist attack on our country.
They had determined the attacks were likely orchestrated by Osama bin Laden and his terrorist group, Al-Qaeda. But even then, the full scope was still unknown. At 9:37 a.m., American Airlines Flight 77 crashed into the western facade of the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia.
It appears that an aircraft of some sort did hit the side of the Pentagon.
Outside the Pentagon this morning said he saw an airplane coming directly over his head. It was an American Airlines plane. He could see the number on the plane.
It's a very haunting description that Bob Kerr. I went back into my office, and right when I stepped, still holding that legal document, right when I stepped in the door, the entire building shook. And this is a building where 20,000 people work. It's humongous. It's like a city. And as soon as I felt that, I thought, this is it. We've been attacked. I ran to the front outside of the Pentagon, and there was this gaping hole in the Pentagon. There was debris and parts of the plane that was smoldering all over the front of it. There was just smoke and fire and helping people get out, and there were people running out of it, and just started setting up triage. For the grace of God, Specialist Cahill, who was a young specialist on leave, who took his aid bag when he went home on leave, and he saw the fireball of the Pentagon, and he ran 2 miles. And he ran to the site, and because he did that, we were able to start, IVs on the injured. And I remember at one point, someone came up and said, what do you need? And I said, I need your belt and I need it now. And he gave it to me, and it ended up being General Webster. I didn't know him, but we became lifelong friends after that. And he gave me his belt, and he went back in the building to save people. But at one point, when the sun started setting, that I had this horrible foreboding feeling as I knew we weren't bringing anybody else out.
Shortly thereafter, we got activated on alert status in South Korea because we just wasn't sure what was going on. We all grabbed our gear. We had different posts that we were assigned to for guard. While we were working out rotations and shifts, folks, who had family members that was in New York that worked at the Trade Center. We had soldiers who had family members that worked here in the National Capital Region and at the Pentagon. And so we immediately met with all the soldiers to find out, who has family where, what's the impact, to try to see what state, their families are in.
I think for most people it was not a normal day after the second tower, but for me it was really the Pentagon attack. It became pretty obvious. Life was going to change forever.
At 9:41 a.m., the FAA took the unprecedented measure of grounding all flights over or bound for the continental United States. But there was still one more hijacked plane in the air. Air National Guard First Lieutenant Heather Penny and Lieutenant Colonel Mark Sasseville took off from Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland in their F-16s with orders to take down the last plane. They did not have ammunition or missiles, so their plan was simple: ram their jets into Flight 93. At 9:59 a.m., the South Tower collapsed. Although many people had begun evacuating, no one above where the plane hit was able to escape. The force of the impact had caused doors to jam, and the elevators were no longer functioning, causing many people to be trapped. The passengers on the last hijacked plane, Flight 93, had been in contact with loved ones and learned the gravity of the situation. Shortly after 10 a.m., those passengers attempted to storm the cockpit and regain control of the aircraft. At 10:03 a.m., the hijackers, seeing no other option, crashed the plane into a field near Shanksville, Pennsylvania. All 33 passengers and 7 crew members aboard were killed. The hijackers' final destination is still debated, however widely believed to have been a target in Washington, D.C.
For me and those of us serving overseas, it was just a moment of helplessness, you know. And just to watch it all unfold over the television, you just gasp. It's like someone punched you in the stomach, you know. Like, how could this be happening on American soil? I'm over here in Korea to defend freedoms in America, and this is what's happening on American soil. So it was heart-wrenching.
At 10:28 a.m., the North Tower collapsed. There were approximately 6,000 injured, and the initial death toll of just that day was 2,751, but has climbed since in light of those who died from diseases they incurred later from breathing the toxins at Ground Zero. It is reported that over 1,400 9/11 rescue workers have since died.
My heart sinks. I think about all those people that have lost their lives. I think about all those people that are now suffering from different types of cancers because of the dust. I feel sad because they are still fighting for people to help them when they knew that they were down at Ground Zero. Nobody should have to fight for them to be able to take care of them.
Ones that are still suffering today, all those policemen and firemen that went down there, and they're now dying because of all the ash and everything that they breathed, and they have post-traumatic stress because they saw so many of their buddies that got killed down there and everything, and that in its sense should not be forgotten because we are losing them. You know, every day we're losing one of them. So not only did we lose all those people during 9/11, but today we're still losing them. So it should never be forgotten, and I think that's it.
The repercussions of 9/11 can still be felt even now as we remember that day 20 years later. We feel them every time we fly. We feel them when we drive past the Pentagon, when we see the Flight 93 National Memorial near Shanksville, Pennsylvania, and we feel them when we see the forever changed New York skyline.
We took a picture of the Twin Towers from space on my mission. We had a gorgeous pass over the Twin Towers during those 6 months, and we had a 1,000mm lens, and we got some fantastic pictures from space of the Twin Towers in sunrise. There was a crew that replaced us on orbit, and indeed the third crew to live on space station. Frank Culbertson was the American on that crew, and he took a picture of Manhattan Island after the Twin Towers fell, and he got out the camera and documented the massive cloud without the towers sitting there. So this contrast of photos, I'm sure it's out there somewhere, but there's a picture we took of the Twin Towers standing tall, and then there's the picture Frank took half hour after the Twin Towers fell. I remember thinking no one is ever going to see this again from space. No one's ever going to see the Twin Towers again from space.
The realities of being a soldier and being trained to protect our freedom, our democracy, our nation, our citizens, to have that happen, you can't help but feel helpless. But it also inspired me to stay Army. It inspired me to continue to serve because that's the reality of what it means to be a soldier.
Being in the military, you want to right then get, what can I'm going back to the Army, let's get this, you know, we need help. Yeah, and that's exactly how I felt.
Because of my service in the military, that particular day, instead of them taking care of me, I was taking care of them.
Whether one was in New York or the Pentagon or even on the other side of the world, that fateful sunny Tuesday morning in September is forever imprinted in the memories of both those who lived it and our country as a whole.
I believe that our country's strong and we're resilient. I believe that everybody stopped at that time so we could all band together as a nation. And it is one of those things that you never forget.
There was a point where there's still the smoke, but the firefighters were on top of the building and they unfurled the flag. And to put into words, it's so hard, but this tremendous pride of knowing why we're called the United States of America. And at that moment, it was crystal clear. It didn't matter what our gender, our ethnicity, our political views, everybody was an American.
To have America to come together and stand united in that effort was very powerful. It was very powerful.
Since September 11th, 2001, the Department of Homeland Security was formed to protect our country from future threats and to prevent tragedies like 9/11 from happening again. When we fly, we now go through screeners, get pat-downs, remove our shoes, and could only bring liquids on planes in small amounts. As a result of that day, America has been engaged in wars in the Middle East and beyond, changing the lives of all those who served for the past 20 years. We at the Military Women's Memorial honor those victims of 9/11, those who died that day, those suffering from diseases incurred by the noxious dust clouds, and those who've paid the ultimate price protecting us in the years since. To all, we say thank you, and may we never forget.
Every year, there's a ceremony and I have to play taps for that. I feel honored to do that too because I always think of those names that are out there that we lost that day.
It was one of those surreal days, one of those days you'll never forget where you were, how you felt, and something that I hope we will never see again.
I knew our enemy thought that we were a divisive country. What they missed is that we're Americans and that they hit the powerhouse of our nation, and we may have been wounded, but we were coming back stronger.